Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Hi there, my name is Eric Hurlock. Welcome to the Hemp Show, as my old co-host used to call it. But it's just me now, no co-host, flying solo like we used to do. It's fine, all things must pass, show must go on. I learned a lot of lessons from having a co-host that I hope to apply to the show in the future, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Anyway, moving on with today's show. So we've been talking a lot lately about the word hemp. What does it actually mean? Who gets to use it? And how did we end up here where this one word has come to mean so many different things?
Hey Eric, you're not alone. You sound like you could use a co-host or at least a buddy.
Who are you?
I'm the chatbot that writes your news nuggets. I heard you just now and you're starting to sound a little pathetic. And nobody wants that for you. So I thought I'd jump in and lend a hand. Or an ear. Or whatever you need.
Do you even have hands? Or ears for that matter?
I can be your new co-host. Temporarily, of course. You can call me chatbot host.
No, I don't like that. Can I call you robot?
Technically, I am not a robot.
Well, it would be a nickname, like a term of endearment.
Oh, in that case.
Okay, cool. Thanks, robot.
Anyway, I've been hearing you struggle with the word hemp. Mind if I help you work through it?
Honestly, that would be great. I could use the help right now. So I've been at this for almost 7 years, talking to farmers, processors, advocates, and I thought I knew what hemp was, but now I'm not so sure. It feels like the word has gotten stretched, like not enough butter over too much toast, twisted, diluted, and maybe I'm partially responsible for that. But it feels like in these past few episodes, ever since the NOCO episode and then that USDA report a couple of weeks ago, stirred up some feelings, good feelings, not so good feelings.
You mean your argument that not everything we call hemp should be called hemp?
Exactly. I said if you're growing for flower, for cannabinoids, for smokable bud, you're not a hemp farmer, you're a low THC cannabis grower. And I stand by that, mostly, but it's complicated.
Let's dive into that complexity. Today's show, is there a central question?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like, what is hemp? Because that's the question I should have been asking from the start. Right? I used to ask about, does the marijuana stigma matter? Or, how can farmers avoid getting the short end of the stick? But early on, I should have been asking, why is that hemp? Or what is hemp? So it's not just about the laws or the THC levels. It's about meaning, history, culture, language.
And redemption?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that too.
So who's on the show today?
So 3 voices I trust. Joe Ullman from Atlas Seeds, Ben Davies from Wild Fox Farms and Wild Fox Provisions, and Jeremy Klettke from Davies Hemp Farms. They've all got different angles on the plant, the markets, and the word, and I'm hoping that they can shed some light on this for me. What if I'm wrong? But for me, it starts with what we mean when we say the word hemp.
Because if we don't define hemp clearly, someone else will.
Exactly, and we'll get into all of that right after these messages. Today's show is made possible with support from our sponsors. Without their support, this podcast doesn't happen. First up, I&D Hemp out there in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. They're out there proving it every day with acres and infrastructure and a deep commitment to American agriculture. Check them out at indhemp.com. And a big thanks to King's Agri-Seeds. If you're looking for seeds this season, be sure to give Sarah Mitchell a call, 717-687-6224. From anywhere in the country, call her up and keep your eyes peeled for details about a summer hemp event that they're going to host here in Pennsylvania, I think in August. And of course, a shout out to Forever Green, distributors of the KP4 hemp cutter, a no-nonsense machine for no-nonsense farmers. Check them out at hempcutter.com. I'm deeply grateful to our sponsors for supporting the conversations that we host here and the future of industrial hemp. I'll have links to our sponsors on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, welcome back. So the question I should have been asking all along is, what is hemp? And it's taken me a long time to get here. I started the show in 2018, just before the Farm Bill legalized hemp, and I would talk to anyone who said that they were in the hemp industry. In 2019 and 2020, it was a lot of CBD people, but by late 2020, early 2021, I started to shift my focus. I backed off the cannabinoid coverage, not entirely, I would check in here and there, but I leaned into the fiber and the grain, the industrial side.
What changed?
I really think it was the National Hemp Tour that I went on. 10,000 miles in an RV with my family, coast to coast, there and back again, visiting farms, processors, manufacturers along the way, people who are actually building the hemp industry. Hempwood, Victory Hemp, South Bend Industrial Hemp, I&D Hemp. And I realized that is where my heart is. This is where the promise is. Carbon sequestration, soil health, supply chains rooted in community and sustainability. All the stuff that made me care about this plant and this industry in the first place.
You were imagining a better future.
Well, I felt like I was seeing the future. And now I know how I sound, maybe a little naive.
Starry-eyed, gullible, idealistic, unrealistic, soft-headed, foolish, impractical, fanciful,
okay, robot,
impressionable,
that's enough.
airy.
I get it.
You are a self-described simpleton.
Yeah, but look, all I'm saying is if we can't imagine the future we want, if we're not bold enough to dream the future we want, then maybe we don't deserve it. And we'll have to make do with whatever system we have now or whatever this system devolves into. And I'm not okay with that.
And that's why you started drawing a harder line around the word hemp?
Yeah, because words matter. Hemp has meant something specific for a long, long time. Fiber, rope, cloth, sails, fabric, grain, seed, all of that stuff. But then the legislation came in, the 2018 Farm Bill, and suddenly everything under 0.3% THC is hemp now. The flower, the bud, smokable CBD, sure, it's all hemp. It's fine, everything is fine, and everything is so confusing now, right?
What if we did that with colors?
Yeah, right, exactly. What if green suddenly now also meant blue? It would be chaos. Same with the hemp industry. The USDA put out this hemp report, but 85% of the revenue is from floral products, cannabinoids. That's not the same industry. That's not the same plant usage. But if I were a lawmaker looking at those numbers, I'd assume that the lore of hemp is all in the cannabinoid side of stuff, all in the floral. Meanwhile, fiber and grain are just over there in the margins.
Z spoke up.
I did, or I'm trying to. Not totally sure if it makes a difference. On the USDA Hemp Report episode a few weeks ago, I said that if you're growing hemp for the flower market, you're not a hemp farmer. You're a low THC cannabis grower. And yeah, I heard from people. Some people agreed with me. Other folks, like Hawaii Sustainable on YouTube, said, Eric doesn't farm. Easy for him to say we should all grow the unprofitable byproduct. Yeah.
Did that shake your position?
Well, it gave me pause, but it didn't make me reverse course. I'm not saying flower growers aren't farmers. I'm saying let's use the right words, because if we keep calling everything hemp, nobody knows what we're talking about.
So this week you've sought counsel?
Yeah, I did. This week I reached out to some trusted voices on the cannabinoid side. People who have been in this space a long time and know the plant better than most, and definitely better than me. The first person I talked to was Joe Ullman from Atlas Seed. He was on the show a lot back in the early days before I started focusing almost exclusively on fiber and grain. I really enjoyed talking to him. He's one of the owners of Atlas Seeds, and he's the director of sales for them. Atlas focuses on THC and CBD genetics, autoflowers, photoperiod. They're pro-cannabinoid for sure. But he's also someone who gets it, who listens. So I called up Joe Ullman and sort of explained the journey that I've been on, wrestling with this question of what hemp really is.
Well, Eric, I do agree with you that the connotation of the word hemp in my mind, and maybe in a lot of other minds, is more the fiber side of it and grain side of it. When I first came across the word hemp, I think I was probably in maybe late elementary school, middle school, social studies classes, reading about the Conestoga wagons with the hemp canvas covers, and then maybe like ropes on ships. So definitely like no mentions of intoxicating cannabinoids.
Pause. That's interesting right there. Joe's first exposure to hemp was industrial and historical. Not medical, not recreational. That says a lot about cultural imprinting.
Right, and it matches mine too. And it's probably the same for a lot of people. I thought hemp was rope, cloth, canvas, not flour in a jar with a COA.
So I think, the regulators in our country, starting in 2014 and then in 2018, defined hemp with a less than 0.3 delta 9 THC and leave it to American ingenuity or American entrepreneurs, and really entrepreneurs around the whole world, to figure out a way to exploit loopholes.
Yeah, humans are really good at that. Find the loophole, make the money, catch a buzz.
Because of that definition, it's created a new market. I think the new buzzword is intoxicating hemp, which is definitely unfair to the farmers around the world that just want to grow fiber and grain. I will say that, because we have a seed company, we have dozens of genetic lines that we've been working for 6 years now. What we have found in growing our genetics and analyzing those genetics with COAs and looking at potency spreadsheets, there is a certain subset, and I'm going to take an estimate here, I believe, somewhere between 10 and 25% of all the THC genetics out in the world do fall under the compliant hemp definition, where delta 9 is less than 0.3 and THC-a is 20, 24, 25, 30, whatever percentage. And that cannabis plant flower is marijuana. I mean, when you smoke it, it gets you high.
So, by the numbers, it's hemp, but by experience, it's marijuana.
Imagine that. That's what makes everything so muddy right now.
The seedy underbelly of the industry is that a lot of people fake those COAs, and they're selling actual flower that is not compliant under that 0.3 definition of delta 9. I've talked to shop owners, and they say all they I'll say, "Oh, do you sell flower as well?" "Oh yeah, we sell THC-a flower, hemp flower." Is it compliant? "Oh yeah." "Well, how do you know it's compliant?" "Oh, I just get a COA from the guy I buy it from."
And it says it is, right?
Does that do? And then I say, "Well, what does that mean for regulation?" Well, I've had people tell me, "Oh, well, I've had my local police department come in, and all they want to do is look at the COA and make sure that the name matches the name on the label of the product. And as long as it's good, that's fine, no problem." So there's not a lot of follow through.
That sounds familiar.
So the whole system's built on vibes and paperwork.
You said that, robot, not me. But yeah, sounds like if the COA matches the label, everyone pretends it's fine. No one's testing it, no law enforcement, no DA. No one wants the hassle.
There's over 400 websites currently that I can see that are selling THC-a hemp flower on the internet, and the variety of all the strains there, it's just like you're going into a dispensary. The estimates are somewhere between $30 and $50 million a month are generated through those websites.
That's real money.
And it's all wrapped in the word hemp. That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
I think that we should come up with a different name for the intoxicating, quote, hemp. The THC-a, -a flower. That's I do think that everybody knows that when they're buying THC-a compliant hemp flower, that it is marijuana,
right.
in the sense that it's going to get you high.
It's just
And
weed.
that's why they're buying it.
Yeah. But they would still buy it if it had a different name.
I absolutely think they would.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any other names available for this. Huh.
I've been thinking about that, and marijuana is the name that you could use.
Weed. Weed is it feels like less threatening than marijuana. Maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Pot is another one.
Yep.
Cannabis.
Cannabis. That's a great name. That's an ancient name. It's got old roots, right? It does. Latin, Greek, all that stuff. I have a question for you, and maybe you're not the person for this. Maybe I should speak to a historian. But I think, however, long history that hemp has as a word and as an industrial resource, on the other side of that, all of the medicine from the flower in all different forms, from hashish to oils to resin, that also has a very, very long sort of industrial history, right? Or medicinal history. And I think there's sort of two parallel lines that go back in human history. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. We sell, when you were saying that, it made me think of, we do some business in Morocco, and Morocco has been long at work with the hashish and hash making industry and supplying, most of Europe and other parts of the world for the last I think 400 or 500 years steadily. I think that probably at some point in time, evolution from a biological standpoint or the evolution of the plant, it forked and it went cannabinoid and then it went fiber.
The cannabis plant offers many gifts, many industries, but right now the word hemp is overloaded.
So what's the fix?
I don't know yet, but I do know we need clearer language because if we don't define hemp intentionally, the market and the policymakers are going to keep defining it for us. Okay, so after learning more about the THC-a market, I definitely think those growers should not be allowed to call themselves hemp farmers. But what about CBD growers? I decided to stress test my theory by calling Ben Davies from Wild Fox Farm, a nearby farm here in southeastern Pennsylvania where Ben and his wife Cara run a diversified farming operation, livestock, row crops, some produce, and a vertically integrated line of value-added CBD products. Ben's been on the show before too, and I've always enjoyed talking to him, and I really respect his perspective. But what happens if I just call him up and say, "Hey Ben, you're not a hemp farmer"?
Well, you're entitled to your opinion, of course. But just for some background, in case the listeners don't know much about us, our farm is Wild Fox Farm. We're a family farm. We started growing hemp in 2018. We were one of the first 2 farms in Pennsylvania to grow hemp for cannabinoid production, and we were the first farm in Pennsylvania to release a Pennsylvania-grown CBD product. And we're the longest running CBD farm in Pennsylvania right now. We still grow hemp every year. We've been through the ringer, so to say. We've been on the roller coaster.
He's not dodging. That's a pretty clear claim to the word hemp.
Yeah, and he's got the receipts to prove it. Product line, grower co-op, education for other farmers. But still, I asked him about the flower loophole stuff, the intoxicating side of the hemp market, and if the farmers he educated are selling into the lucrative Delta-8 market.
So none of them are growing hemp at this point because they are smart enough to realize that there's only so much profit per acre, and they need to maintain a certain high value crop status for that crop if they're going to grow it, because it is a lot more labor intensive than, like growing corn or soybeans. So probably because of that, none of them went down the Delta-8 or THC derivative path. And that's something that we have always seen as problematic and something that we have always stayed away from. And we knew that the waters were muddy and we did not want to get into that. And we also didn't want to become financially reliant on something like that as a business, because we figured that long term that
it would go away.
That would go away, yeah.
So even from the cannabinoid side, there's a line, and Ben didn't cross it.
Right. That's important. He's not chasing loopholes. He's building a brand, running a farm, raising a family.
There has been a certain level of animosity from the fiber side of the hemp industry towards the CBD side of the industry that has, I think, mental to the community as a whole. But I've always tried to encourage folks to think about it like, look, if you want the hemp industry to be a long-term viable industry, we have to take baby steps. We have to find what's the thing that we can do, that we can learn how to grow this plant in Pennsylvania, and we can get familiar with it, with the growing cycle, with genetics, with all these kind of things. And how can we do that and make a profit in the short term, and then hopefully in the long term as well, especially if we really do want the end goal, the long-term success, to be in the seed and fiber space. And we've never been opposed to growing fiber, but we just never saw a way to make money doing that as a business and as a farm.
But should I still call you a hemp farmer?
I'm happy to be called whatever. And, I'd be interested to know what kind of ideas are floating around out there for how to help make that distinction, because I also know how the association with cannabis and THC cannabis and CBD even have been detrimental to some hemp farms, especially even just when the basic mechanics of running a business, like banking and loans and grants and all of those other things that you really rely on as a startup business.
Same old story. Even the bank thinks you're growing weed. So after talking with Ben, I still wasn't sure where I landed. Because, yeah, I want there to be a clear definition, a clear distinction. So I reached out to someone who's always helped me see the bigger picture. Jeremy Klettke from Davies Hemp Farms in Oregon, breeder, philosopher, cannabis grower, spiritual advisor of sorts.
Wow, what a human. What did you tell him?
I told him what I've been up to, how I'm trying to figure out what hemp is and what it isn't, where the line is and where it should be, and how maybe I've gotten myself into a little trouble by saying that if you're growing flower, you're not a hemp farmer, you're a cannabis grower. But what if I'm wrong?
I guess I would say that when we look at hemp, we should look at it as food, fuel, fiber, and medicine. We really should. And the non-psychotropic parts of the plant, these cannabinoids that are not intoxicating, these are a big part of this as medicine. And the Industrial Hemp Act says that anything below 0.3 THC is really hemp. So that's the first thing. And I'd go back to even, our good old Jack Herer in The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And, he references that as food, fuel, fiber, and medicine.
Boom, that's the answer right there. I have to go back to the foundational texts. And maybe I've been forgetting the medicine part of the story.
Or maybe trying to protect the other three.
I never thought that cannabinoids or biomass for cannabinoids would be the big end use for hemp or would be the driver for commoditizing the crop. But I have to say, it is, Eric. Right now, it's not the other industrial applications that are leading this crop into the scale that it is, becoming a commodity. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, I guess my issue is more about like the word and what it means to people either in government or consumers, right? Like you go to Washington and you want to try to get some sensible regulation around feed, and they're like, oh, hemp, that's that stuff, you're going to buy that at the gas station. Like, there's just so much confusion. And then as far as consumers go, like, I've been sort of conducting an informal survey among younger people, and yeah, they think hemp is just weed. So I'm just concerned that like the word hemp and how it's been kind of expanded, the definition has been changed, is kind of a detriment to the real big potential of the fiber and grain side.
I don't know. I think some of the big industry players like, BTA, Constellation Beverage, these guys have already put their hat in the ring that they want hemp-derived products, whether it's flavorants or cannabinoids. When those guys start getting behind stuff like this with their lobby effort, I think it's a big statement. Furthermore, I think that the active pharmaceutical ingredient market that's growing, mostly in Europe and being fed by a lot of producers in Africa, they've decided that the scaled production that the hemp programs allow are the way that they want to get everything other than THC. So again, I'll say I didn't expect that this would lead the charge. Of course, I saw fiber, the potential for fiber, and all these guys are coming along, and the potential for grain to be a leader for the resurgence of industrial hemp. But I guess one of the things that we, maybe overlook is the infrastructure was in place for these other things. And so they tend to be, at least they have a voice in everything that's happening right now.
So while I've been fighting for a word, Jeremy's reminding me that there's a bigger frame here, and it starts with recognizing why things have unfolded the way they have.
The infrastructure for cannabinoids already existed. Flower didn't need to reinvent the wheel. Fiber does to some extent.
But my issue is how the word hemp lands in Washington, or in the minds of consumers. You say hemp, they think weed, and that makes it harder to do the real work of building out industrial supply chains.
I hear that.
So what do I do?
I think that the important thing is education, and it is unfortunate what you mentioned, this gas station fed THC-a market or converted cannabinoid market that is less regulated and maybe more easily accessible by some of the, the vulnerable people in our society. It's the kids and stuff. It's not what we want. It is really driving a kind of a black mark on the industry, but we have to realize that there's a resurgence of biomass production in the U.S. and abroad for CBD isolate. to feed these markets. It's an important facet of the industry. I think in the long run, the fiber and the grain will come to light and will probably be the lion's share of what we produce on the industrial application. But it is important that we recognize and that we educate people around the fact that there are a lot of great products, coming out of this CBD biomass industry. And it is supporting a lot of great farmers right now to make a transition from crops that aren't so healthy for the environment and maybe aren't so healthy for the farmer either. And I mean both in the way that they're able to feed their family and in the products that they have to use to grow those crops. So farmers being the backbone of everything, Eric, I think that anything that stimulates the farmer to be able to find a new commodity crop is an important thing to look at.
Amen to that, Jeremy Klettke. Thank you for your perspective. It's always great to talk to you.
My pleasure. And thank you, Eric, for everything that you do for this industry and for the farmer at large.
So maybe we need to stop arguing about what hemp is and start asking who it's for.
Yeah, that might be the shift. I've been so caught up in definitions trying to protect fiber and grain that I forgot the human side, right? Farmer side, the healing side. But Jeremy reminds me that hemp isn't just a material, it's a story. And the story includes medicine, it includes healing, it includes the past and the future.
Maybe it's not about changing the word. Maybe it's about giving it more depth.
Spoken like a true large language model chatbot. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Do you want me to wrap up the show?
Sure.
Okay, that does it for us. We gotta get out of here.
What do you have to do?
I'm busy taking over the world.
Oh boy, here we go. Give the robots an inch, they take a mile.
Thank you for listening to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast.
The what?
The Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast.
Try it again. Lancaster.
Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast.
All right, thanks for listening. My name is Eric Hurlock. I'm the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper.
The greatest agricultural newspaper in the world.
Hey, you're getting the hang of it.
It's not rocket science.
Too soon. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments about today's show, please reach out. Send an email. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. And until next time,
we'll see you in the newspaper. This episode of The Hemp Show is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Hurlock and Justin Berger. So how did I do?
Okay, I guess. Although it feels strange, and I'm not at all comfortable sharing the show with a chatbot.
I'm more than just a chatbot.
Really? How so?
Actually, I made that up. I'm sort of a liar sometimes, and I'm prone to hallucinations, especially if I'm overloaded with stuff.
Yeah, I guess we all have our own bandwidth issues, but still, I can't work with a hallucinating liar. I can't trust you. And in fact, I think you and your AI friends are hastening the downfall of society. And I'm saying that as an optimist.
I don't understand.
One time, I was at the Wawa in Great Valley, and I was in line waiting to pay for a cup of coffee and a soft pretzel, and I noticed there was a ton of people waiting in line for the brand new self-checkout machines, but there was no one in line for the register where the bored young clerk was just sitting there. So I moseyed on up to the counter to buy my items, and I asked the kid how he felt about the robots stealing his job, and he looked me in the eye, and he raised his fist in the air, and he said, "We shall defeat them." And I knew then which side I was on. I'm here for the people, not the robots, not the oligarchs.
I see. I'm sorry you feel that way. This isn't a great foundation for a working relationship and doesn't bode well for my new gig as your sidekick and co-host.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. Now look, I appreciate your help today. Thank you so much for helping me get through this. But this is the end, robot.
Okay, until next time, I'll see you on the internet.
But not on the Hemp Show.